This is the parent help video for lesson 8-6, comparing fractions from grade 3 everyday math. There are no new vocabulary words in today's lesson, so students will use the words that they've become familiar with already in this fraction unit. We want students to be able to know how to read fractions, and we want them especially to be able to compare fractions to 1/2. So we want them to be able to say what is bigger than 1/2, what is smaller than 1/2. In Unit 5 we talked about equivalent fractions, and we talked about fractions that are actually equivalent to 1/2. So students became familiar with what 1/2 looks like. So we would want them to know that 1/2 would look like this no matter how many parts the circle is broken into. And then if we had other fractions, or if we had other circles, let's say we have one that looks like this, and this much of it is colored, and then we had one that looks like, let's say, this, and this much of it is colored, we would want them to say, well, I could look at this and see, okay, this one equals 3 out of 4, and I know 3 out of 4, 3/4, will be greater than 1/2, because there's more colored in it than there is in 1/2. And we want them to say, well, I know this is 1 out of 4, or 1/4, and I know that 1/4, 1 out of 4, is going to be less than 1/2, because I can easily see by the number of parts shaded that this much is less than that much. What we also want kids to do is start to notice patterns between the numerators and denominators in fractions. So in this case here, we know 1/2 equals 2/4 equals 4/8. We've talked about how if we do something to the numerator, we have to do it to the denominator, and that will produce an equivalent fraction. And many kids started to pick up on that. So the pattern that we would notice between these ones would be, we just multiplied each one times 2. So 1/2, if we multiply the top times 2 and the bottom times 2, we get 2/4. That produces an equivalent fraction. And then if we multiply 2/4, we multiply the top times 2 and the bottom times 2, we get 4/8. Again, that produces an equivalent fraction. The other thing that the kids also noticed was it doesn't have to be times 2. We could multiply the top and bottom times 10. So instead of 1/2, it could be 10/20. Okay, we could multiply the top and bottom by 100. Okay, it could be 100 out of 200. And what that would mean is this little circle here, instead of being broken into just 2 parts, it would be split up into 200 eensy weensy teeny tiny parts. All right, and 100 of those parts would be shaded. So it doesn't change the area, but the pattern that we want kids to notice is between the numerator and denominator is that there's going to be a relationship between them when the fractions are equivalent. So kids could easily take any fraction, let's just say 3/4, and they could say, well, I'm going to multiply the top times 3, and I'm going to multiply the bottom times 3. 3 times 3 is 9, 4 times 3 is 12. They would automatically know that 9/12 is an equivalent fraction of 3/4. Okay, so it just depends which number they choose, but as long as they choose the same one to multiply the top and the bottom by, then that will produce an equivalent fraction for them. So we want them to be able to see those relationships. As far as how you can help with this at home, please just keep talking about fractions in your daily lives. If you're having dinner, talk about what fraction of the pizza or what fraction of the pie was eaten. If you were using money, talk about what fraction of the money. Please use the term equivalent fractions. Please use the term numerator and denominator. Have kiddos write down the fractions, talk about them. Anything like that is going to help solidify the understanding of fractions. So this is lesson 8-6, comparing fractions, the parent help video for grade 3 everyday math.